United State of the Union? From what got both sides of the aisle cheering to the president's call for unity.
Not as two parties, but as one nation.
And House Speaker Pelosi's clapbacks going viral. Outbreak. How the return of the measles has some parents furious and claiming that anti-vaxxers are putting their children's lives at risk. Plus, former executive editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, on who's winning President Trump's war with the media and if online news sites like BuzzFeed are helping or hurting the battle. Let's fire up Hot Topics with Whoopi, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Day off. I think she's under the weather a little bit, I think, yeah. But we'll have her back hopefully tomorrow. So last night was Trump's second State of the Union address. And before we get into how we think he did, I want to show one moment that made both sides of the aisle get up on their feet. Watch.
Exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before.
Okay, so wait a minute. Is he so clueless that he actually thinks that the reason there are women in Congress in these numbers because he did something right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
He's taking the credit when he really should take the blame. Am I wrong about this?
Yes, I thought they were trolling him.
I think they were.
I think they were, right? They ran because they didn't like his policies.
Well,
A lot of them.
I found it to be just an empowering moment for women. I saw, like, Trump's not going to be in office forever, and so there were a number of moments. No, we do have certain limits. No, but I thought it was a moment that we could all get on our feet and be so proud of how far we've come.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the Republican Party has a lot of work to do to get women to run and to win.
I mean, isn't it unbelievable
but
the
if he didn't
difference in
mention
the
it-
sides?
Well, I mean, for me, like, I agreed with your assessment that I did think it was trolling on their part. And by the way, take the moment when it comes. State of the Unions are so much a part of sort of signaling your politics in one way or another to your base of supporters.
Yeah.
So
He did
100%
that.
they did as well.
He did that, yeah.
And even just wearing the white suits. But make no mistake, these are liberal Democratic women. So for me as a woman, when you see women not applauding for the 20-week abortion ban, which, by the way, 70 to 80% of women, Democrat and Republican in the country, are against, this women's issues is complicated for me because I'm not a liberal woman. So to say, like, oh, amazing, women are getting elected. Well, for me, I thought it was weird to see some people clapping when it's like, for me, I'd like to see more conservative women in my vein, not Trump women, but conservative women get elected. But the feather in the cap of the wave of Democratic congresswomen who were recently elected, 100% they were in the right taking their moment last night. And I was up late if I'm...
But I understand what you're saying because I like the idea that women are there, but I don't want somebody like Sarah Palin or Michelle Bachmann.
Well, that's the thing is women's issues is all convoluted. Like, all women vote the same way, have the same ideas, feel the same way about abortion. Look at this table. So I think it's misguided to have this applause for the president at the same time because this wave was real and it was a mass rejection of him by so many women coming up. And by the way, as conservative women, we need to see this bright and clear. There are not a lot of Republican women that are getting elected. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know
it's like it's like 4-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. Why is that? Why don't conservative women like you go out there and say it and call it what it is, that the emperor is wearing no clothes?
And can they be elected? Can they be elected, though?
I don't know in this fever because the Trump fever is loud and strong. Over 80% of Republicans support President Trump. For me, I'm a classic Jack Kemp conservative, and I can't get on board with this populist phenomenon. It was weird to see Republicans, by the way, clapping against trade. We're supposed to be the party of free trade.
Why they do that?
Because because the party has reinvented itself in the form of the golden god of Trump.
Yeah,
so
sad.
for me, I wouldn't run because I would get primaried by a Trump supporter, and what's the purpose of that when I have this wonderful job here at The View?
Exactly.
But really, both sides are kind of going through that, right?
The address was received far better than his first State of the Union. Some called it Reagan-esque.
Really?
Yes.
It was, it was very.
Let me show you something
Sorry.
before you talk. Let's see.
I'm talking over
An
you.
economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. Year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal, illegal aliens. In the past, most of the people in this room voted for a wall, but the proper wall never got built. I will get it built.
Okay, first of all, let me just say that there's so many things to say in those three things he just said. Number one was the wall. Let's go for the wall. The majority of Americans don't want the wall. They think it's stupid.
Yeah.
Then the crime amongst illegal or legal immigrants is so far down that mostly it's Americans who are committing crimes in this country. It's a lie.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Oh, about the investigations. Well, does the name Richard Nixon ring a bell? Nixon said, enough with the Watergate. And then less than 200 days later, he was gone.
Yeah.
So these investigations, that train has left the station, honey, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But you know what? Look.
So true. That was very Nixonian. My takeaway, I thought it was kind of a dark speech. It seemed to be at the beginning about unity, and I was like, oh, well, this sounds pretty good. And it was Reagan-esque in that sense, but then it took a turn when it started talking about the wall. He wasn't really reading the room well. I felt like that's when people were like, ugh. I mean, it didn't have that you lie moment, but I thought people started grumbling a lot.
Yeah.
And then, I felt that there were a lot of lies there. He started talking about undocumented immigrants, and he was using that term illegal alien. He sort of resurfaced that.
Yeah.
People are not illegal. Acts are illegal. And I think we need to start saying that more and more and more. It's about undocumented immigrants. That was the first thing that I noticed. And then he starts talking about undocumented immigrants, committing more crime. Well, no, 44%, it's less. I think it's like the stats are they commit about 44. They're less likely to commit. They were about 44% less likely to be incarcerated than native-born Americans.
Right.
So that stat is just not true.
Keep in mind, the room and the audience are his opponents for 2020, though. A lot of the candidates who have already announced and will more than likely be announcing. So a lot of this was also virtue signaling to his base, which does well with immigration. When he was talking about
why do you have to lie about
people,
it?
But when he's saying things like, and I'm going to butcher this, excuse me, I was up late on the coverage of this, but when the politicians with their walls and guarded security, that is a siren call to his base that's watching right now. And I think it started out, I agree with you, I was like, who doesn't love astronauts and veterans and men who stormed the beaches of Normandy? Those are all wonderful things I think everyone can get behind, and then intervened were his policies and virtue signals for 2020, which is normal for a president to do. For me, what was hard for me last night is I was prepping and getting ready, and I was reading my notes beforehand, and I get a notice that President Trump had a meeting with the network heads, and he had called Senator Chuck Schumer a nasty son of a bitch, Joe Biden dumb, said some disparaging things once again, my father who passed 5.5 months ago. So for me, when he's talking about we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution.
He wasn't being best.
You aren't being bipartisan mere hours earlier, obsessing over people you consider your enemies. So for me, it was a kabuki theater, virtue signal, the entire speech last night towards his base. But please don't sit here and tell me you are grasping for bipartisanship at this moment when Chuck Schumer's a son of a bitch and my father's book, quote, bombed, and Joe Biden is, quote, done.
But how pathetic do you have to be to go after somebody who's dead? My God.
Well, I also don't know. I don't know why he keeps bringing that up. Because what do you gain by that? And I don't. even if you're in the base, I mean, I don't think anyone can stand for that.
What he does.
But what about the lies that are immediately fact-checked? I would think at this point, especially the lies about the wall, the lies about immigration, the lies about, and he also said this, he said, oh, by the way, you know, I want more legal immigrants coming to the country than ever before. He has the lowest cap for legal immigration. He only wants 30,000 legal immigrants to come.
And only from
That's the lowest in U.S. history.
But it plays very well
from any other countries except the.
But doesn't his base read?
So Meghan's
They
right.
know it's lies. They know it's lies.
Good.
Can I speak now?
Yeah.
So the State of the Union, at least for me, it is a time where we can find some unifying message. It's also a time when if you're president, you won the election. You have the platform. And that's why when Obama was president, he talked about health care, when that moment famously of when the representative said you lied. So the president has every right to talk about immigration. That was my least favorite part of the speech, personally. There were some really strong moments last night. It was less about Trump for me. It was more about inspiring stories and the guests that were invited to the speech that gave me chills. One of those was this moment that's never happened in the State of the Union where a happy birthday was sung to Judah Samet, who was turned 81 yesterday. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he survived the mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. I think we have a clip of that, if we can play it.
Oh, we don't have a clip.
No, we don't. Well, there was that moment. There was also Alice Marie Johnson talking about criminal justice reform. I don't know if we have the clip. That was him.
In 1997, Alice was sentenced to life in prison as a first-time nonviolent drug offender. In June, I commuted Alice's sentence. She is a terrific woman. Terrific. Alice, please.
I think there were some moments that if you could step away and say, look,
I want to
take
give him credit,
the president out of it, but if you can focus on some things that is bigger than the president right now.
But he's using people as political props. Why is that a good thing?
No, but if you talk about criminal justice, you talk about infrastructure.
All right.
We're actually going to come back and talk about Stacey Abrams, who gave the rebuttal, because she was really interesting. We'll be right back.
Okay, so there's a big election coming, and the candidates are lining up.
Are you going to run for president?
We can do impossible things when we come together.
It is raining candidates here on The View.
They all voice different views.
Do you think this country is ready for a gay president?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
But they all have one thing in common. They come here because
This is the best place to do it.
in this epic year ahead.
Anybody who wants to make it to the next level in politics has to come on this show.
Because this is the place to be heard.
If you're a Republican and you want to make news, come on this show.
It's Weird the View on ABC. Jill Abramson on what President Trump's war with the media and the rise of online news sites means for the future of the free press in America.
Welcome back. Okay, so as advertised, we're talking about the State of the Union rebuttal. And, you know, they don't have a great track record, these rebuttals, in the past. I mean, Marco Rubio had water problems. He was dry. Remember all the water he was drinking? And then, remember that Joe Kennedy had a chapstick issue? His lips were chapped. The dreaded Michelle Bachmann looking at the wrong camera. So,
Bobby Jindal walking awkwardly downstairs.
And
I love Bobby Jindal, but it was awkward.
It was like in his house or something.
It's really a
Not
tough
great.
spot. So, imagine how much better this looked last night compared to those. Former Georgia gubernatorial national candidate Stacey Abrams broke the curse last night by delivering a powerful Democratic response. Let's watch it.
Even as I am very disappointed by the president's approach to our problems, I still don't want him to fail. But we need him to tell the truth and to respect his duties and respect the extraordinary diversity that defines America.
So she says she doesn't want the president to fail. And when she said that, I thought, I wonder how many Democrats agree with that. Because to me, if the country is failing because he's so awful, then I want him to fail too. I want someone to come in and save it.
I think it was a smart strategy on her part because they knew going into it that the president was going to try to give a unifying message. And if you look at the polls, I mean, 80% of independents that watched last night loved the speech. And so if you're thinking about 2020 and what sort of message am I going to bring that's different to the table and try and get those independent voters, even people that voted for Trump, I can't be a socialist. I can't be out there so far left that's not going to attract any of those middle people. So she was very smart to go that direction.
I have to say,
what she really thinks, I think, is different than what she said there.
Yeah, but I have to say the word socialist is now becoming a buzzword like liberal and feminist, where the right wing is now taking that word and distorting it. So every time you use it, I'm going to interrupt you.
But how is it what Ocasio-Cortez is saying?
Yeah, it is being used. It's being weaponized.
Bastardized, that word. Nobody really understands
I think you bastardize a lot of things, too. This is the view. I mean, there's a lot of things you say that I disagree with.
Well, give me a buzzword that I use that I bastardize.
Right wing. Start with that.
Right wing, that's true, isn't it?
I'm conservative. I'm not part of the right wing. But can we go back to Stacey Abrams? Because I was actually looking forward to talking about her.
Okay.
Really quickly. First of all, I love a jewel tone dress with a brooch, and I loved her fashion. Number one. I thought she looked just wonderful.
Yeah.
Killed it. I mean,
she did look good.
We have to talk about the fashion a little bit. It's good.
Nancy Pelosi looked great last night, too, by the way.
Nancy killed it with that beautiful white. She's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, and again, it's a visual medium giving as
her
well.
facial expressions were wonderful.
She is saying that I don't want him to fail. I agree with Abby in the sense that I never want America to fail. I never want any of our presidents to fail because I do think ultimately it will impact all of us.
Right.
And I actually do think it's a smart strategy. I also think when they announced her as the person who was going to give the rebuttal, I was like, but she's a failed candidate, so it's more traditional to have someone who's been in office or serving. And then afterward, I was like, maybe she's looking at a run because this was pretty strong.
As president?
I don't know, or as vice president, or as a cabinet member, or something. And another person that I maybe have written off too quickly.
And I think a lot of people think she's a failed candidate because of all the gerrymandering that was going on in her district.
But she's not currently governor, Sonny. So let's be factually accurate. She is not currently governor.
And she almost won in a very big
but you're not first, you're last, like Ricky Bobby says.
There,
I mean,
there was a lot of that going on. But
winning or losing.
I thought her tone was right on, and she sort of had this everyday tone, and that was important. And I also thought what was important about it was she was fact-checking him in sort of not real time, but right afterwards. And that was the big problem that I had with it. It was like,
she wasn't snarky, though.
It wasn't malicious, right? It was more of a, it came from a really real place. The other part that just quickly that I loved, speaking about expressions, Nancy Pelosi was in such an important position because you watched every facial expression she had.
Oh, it was good.
Do you think there was like a strategy when she would look with Chuck Schumer that they said before, like, if you stand, I'll know to stand, because the party sort of follows you, because whenever she would stand, you would think about that. Yeah. And if she didn't stand,
why
that was
why is her clapping have millions of memes? He's going,
because she did a funny clap. That was a good clap. That was
it reminded me of. Do you guys know that baby, the baby song, Baby Shark, do do do? Is that what that is? I listen to it every day with my daughter, and it just reminded me so much of
what I did notice in the very beginning.
Now it's in my head all day.
Senator Harris's facial expressions were one to watch as well. But what I noticed at the very beginning, I don't know if everyone else did, she was in control not only of herself but of that body. Because there was one moment when she did this, because people were getting a little bit out of line, and they settled down immediately. That woman is in control of the House.
Okay. All right. That was very clear. Let me do this because, February is Black History Month, and we like to, spotlight a lot of famous and interesting and successful black people. So today's Black History Month, FYI, salutes one of the true American action heroes. His name is Robert Smalls. He was a slave in Beaufort, South Carolina, and he worked on a Confederate ship during the Civil War. But in 1862, he went full Mission Impossible by gathering his family and other slaves and commandeering the ship to freedom. Imagine that. He disguised himself. He was using the ship's code book and hand signals to safely navigate past other Confederate ships. And after the war, this guy rose up the political ladder and became a 5-term South Carolina congressman. Really amazing. We'll be right back with more Hot Topics. Welcome back. So there are measles outbreaks happening in Washington State and Oregon right now. That have parents furious at people who refuse to vaccinate their kids. They say the anti-vaxxers are putting their kids' lives at risk. Study after study has found that there is absolutely no link between vaccinations and autism. So why doesn't this conspiracy theory die? That is the question.
And how are we still dealing with measles outbreaks at this point? They were saying up to 50 cases. My brother and his wife and their 2-year-old son live right where this is happening, right outside Seattle. And I got a call from my sister-in-law the other day, and her son's been sick. And she said, I got a note from someone in the class who said, or the teacher who said, there's been a student who we think might have the measles and he's going to get checked. It hits so close to home. And he's obviously gotten his shots, but it's so unfair to the parents who are giving their kids vaccines. But if you're not 2 yet, you could be in a really tough position. If you want to give your kid the vaccine, you haven't gotten it, you're not old enough yet.
The guy who started this conspiracy, this lie, his name is Andrew Wakefield, a British surgeon. This is what happened. And the truth of the matter is that he was creating a competing vaccine. He had a patent for his own vaccine, see? So he had a motivation to put this lie out. Not only that, but lawyers were suing the drug companies and making money for themselves.
Damn lawyers.
So all of this has... Right.
All about the money.
Shakespeare. First we killed the lawyers. But that is really how this whole thing started. And now it is mushroomed. And just one more point, then I'll let you talk. These are the following states that give philosophical exemptions. Not everybody does. So if you say you have a religious reason or you blah, 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 they will let you go to school without vaccinations, thus contaminating other children possibly. Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado.
Arizona?
Yeah.
That's you. That's you.
Idaho, Louisiana, Maine. Some of them are red states, some of them are blue states. It's not a political thing. Colorado, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania,
pretty
Texas,
much everywhere.
Utah, Washington, Wisconsin.
That's
Not New York.
Utah. That's you too.
No, Utah's not in it. Utah wasn't on that list.
Utah is right here.
Yeah, that's you too.
Why?
I thought I heard Utah. So basically, if you're in Arizona or Utah, you can just say, I don't like it. And then you can send your kid to the public school?
These are what we call philosophical. Listen, these are philosophical exemptions. Every state has religious exemptions.
Yeah, I know every state has.
I say homeschool your kids then.
How about this philosophical exemption? So, not to make this like totally dark, but when my father had cancer and he was getting treatment, I would see a lot of children getting treatment as well and being brought in. Some of them had the same cancer that my dad had. Some of them had other cancers. And when all people are going through cancer, you get chemotherapy and you're more susceptible to getting diseases because of your compromised immune system. So the problem that I have with this is if you don't want to vaccinate your child, I think it's insane, but okay, whatever. But you are actually putting the lives of other children in danger, and children who could be suffering and are also fighting for their lives at the moment. And I know that there was a case of a man who went viral after he was talking about my child is in the hospital and he or she may have the measles, and these are the real life ramifications. So if you can't protect your own children, at least think of the families who are suffering through cancer treatments and chemotherapy and the possible harm and life-threatening danger you're putting.
But it has to be a law. It has to be an actual law because you can't trust people to go along with it.
I know there's no federal law, but it's different from state to state. But all states have medical exemptions. So if your child medically can't have, a certain vaccination, that's one thing. I think all states have religious exemptions, but I wasn't aware of these philosophical exemptions. I mean, that's so
like my philosophy.
I mean, you do have to balance.
I don't believe in it.
You do have to balance your freedom
about children with cancer.
But yeah,
I mean,
you can't.
Really? And I also want to point out, Seattle, the polio vaccination rate is lower than in Rwanda. So
and by the way, it costs $1 to vaccinate your child for measles. It's $1.
And also they're finding that there are other possible causes of autism, and this is not one of them. So people have to stop it.
Well, just protect yourself.
Making everybody nuts.
Yeah. Actually, only 47 states allow religious exemptions.
Oh, not all of them.
Not all.
New York is one of them.
I don't have the list.
I had the measles.
I'm going to have to go.
Wait, just give me applause if you had the measles shot when you were a kid.
I believe I did.
Okay, thank you. Not for nothing. You look pretty normal to me. Coming up, are we about to have a close encounter with aliens? Oh, yes. This is not from the Inquirer. This is from Harvard. Find out next. Lovely audience, all vaccinated. I want to just remind everybody. Right now, there is an unidentified flying object in our solar system that is buzzing the planet Jupiter. And get this, the top astronomer at Harvard University, his name is Avi Loeb, he says that according to his calculations, it is an extraterrestrial spacecraft. Okay, maybe he's high. Who knows?
No.
But, he has credentials.
Head of the department.
Head of the department at Harvard, yeah. So what about it? I mean...
Don't I always tell you that there are aliens among us?
I'm with you.
Why are you pointing at him?
Somebody's with me.
I believe it too. I mean, how we're so small in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee there are worlds out there we have no clue. Sometimes I'm like, I'd love to go live there.
I know, right?
What if it's nicer? What if it's better?
I mean, think about it. The hubris for us to think that we are the most intelligent, evolved life form.
Yeah. So I had an experience, which you know about.
In
Arizona, as, by the way, did almost every other Phoenician at the time. In 1997, there was an incident called the Phoenix Lights, and I have a vivid memory of this, which, by the way, the governor at the time, Fife Symington, now says he believes was, in fact, extraterrestrials. And there were all these weird lights that were around Camelback Mountain, and no one understood what it was. People were saying they were military flares, but extraterrestrial believers were unsatisfied. I remember as a child being absolutely petrified. It was like we're being invaded, even as I think I was 12 or 13. It's really scary.
Has it ever been explained?
It has not been explained. And Kurt Russell revealed in 2017 that he was one of the pilots that reported it. And he said, quote, I was flying Oliver, his son, to see his girlfriend. We were on approach. I saw the 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in V shape. So it's considered one of the greatest forms of evidence that there is life beyond us.
How long did it look like that for?
Only a few hours, but
hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's scary. I know. Can you imagine looking out your window?
Like someone has the answer to that, and they're just being
It's not a weather balloon.
It's at Area 51.
All I can say is, I don't know if it's true, but I would welcome some intelligent life on this planet.
You just laid that out for you.
We have a minute and a half to do this topic. Let's see if you can do it. The Oscars are just a few weeks away, and Bradley Cooper told Oprah Winfrey, that is, how he felt when he found out he didn't get a Best Director nomination for A Star is Born. Take a look.
I was in New York City at a coffee shop, and I looked down at my phone, and Nicole had texted me, and they said, congratulations on these other things, but they didn't tell me the bad news.
Yes.
And I went, oh, wow. And the first thing I felt was embarrassment, actually.
Oh.
Well, think about it. I felt embarrassed that I didn't do my part.
So, poor Bradley.
He's done okay in life. I don't feel that bad.
He felt embarrassed.
The first time he directed a film.
But it shows you, no matter how famous, no matter how gorgeous, no matter how successful, there's always something, a little critic on your shoulder saying, you see, you didn't get that.
You know what I found in life, though?
It's insane.
If you rely on these things to give you, like, your inner confidence, I find you're never going to be fully satisfied.
Yeah, right.
And I say that as someone that feels embarrassed and insecure all the time. We're human. But if you can somehow find that confidence in yourself, I feel like I'm going to give this speech to my daughter one day. She'll be like, why are you talking to me like this?
It's not easy.
But if you rely on other things for that happiness and for that security, then you're never going to be totally satisfied and happy with yourself.
Remember, only the mediocre are always at their best.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Why does the former editor of the New York Times say the paper definitely has an anti-Trump bias? Does she think the president's winning his war on the media? Jill Abramson is live on The View. Next. This week on The View, you know the hot topics are out of control.
Break it down, Joy.
Bye-bye.
Plus, from the award stage to our stage, the one and only Glenn Close hits The View. This week on ABC.
Feed, you don't know what to believe. There's never been more chaos, confusion, and mistrust of American media. So here to help make sense of all this is former executive editor of the New York Times and author of the new book, Merchants of Truth, Jill Abramson. Thank you so much for joining us. And as I just mentioned, thank you. As I just mentioned, Donald Trump has waged an all-out war on the media. He calls the media fake news, enemies of the people. Enemies of the people. What is your take on that? I mean, has that really damaged the American trust in the news?
The Americans' trust in the news was pretty low before Trump was elected. I think he's playing to his base by attacking the press most of all. I think it's outrageous and anti-democratic in a fundamental way because the press was made free by the founders of this country because they trusted the news media to hold power accountable and bring the public and voters the reliable information that they needed. So it just seems
undemocratic.
Yes, and even unpatriotic. I mean, the First Amendment is first for a reason.
But you yourself have made news because you said, quote, the New York Times is unmistakably anti-Trump. Do you think that the New York Times is guilty of the liberal bias that many people have accused them of? I mean, I'm one of the people that have called the New York Times the New York Slimes before because I thought the bias was so intense. Is there any culpability on the journalist's part as well?
Well, you know, I don't know that I'd use the word bias, but there's no question that the New York Times is a liberal paper. It's headquartered in New York. It reflects the interests of people who live on the blue coasts of this country. And, you know, sometimes I think it's a matter of just there are too many Trump stories all at once that he would call those are the bad stories, you know, that are probing, that are looking at things like, did he evade gift taxes, you know, the essence of the Mueller probe. That's news that everyone needs to know, but maybe not like 5 at once.
But are the stories themselves inaccurate?
No, they're not inaccurate. What
should they do instead?
Well,
just do 2 stories instead of 5?
Well, you know, I worked at the Wall Street Journal for 8 years, and there we would try to combine certain things so that there weren't multiple stories. The thing most of all, rather than political bias, that worries me is the news media is so reactive to President Trump and all of his tweets.
Does that help him? Does that help him in a way?
Well, it helps him because, you know, after 20 seasons of The Apprentice, he knows how to manipulate the news media. He is the master. So
why are they playing into that?
Because, A, he's the president, and the norms of journalism are that you cover what the president says.
And he gives you news every 10 seconds.
Well,
it's hard to
sometimes it's fake news.
Well, yeah, but the New York Times has to figure that out.
My criticism would be, sorry to interrupt you, but my criticism would be the cultural reporting. Because Trump's win was a huge shock to the majority of journalists who were on the road with him. And then there are people like Selena Zito, who she lives in rural Pennsylvania. It didn't come as a surprise to her. So my criticism is just, if you're not understanding the people you're reporting on, you can't understand where a gun owner in rural Pennsylvania comes from, you're going to get the story wrong. So how does someone like the New York Times, would you just hire journalists who are living in the field? Would you send journalists out in a different way? Because the cultural criticism, I think, is the strongest.
It's true, because, you know, you are reflecting the point of view, and it may be yours too as a journalist there, of the blue 2 coasts. And when I was an editor at the Times, we actually did open bureaus in Kansas City and in Phoenix because we wanted reporters at least in the middle of the country.
You're not saying that the New York Times blurs the front page with the opinion page, are you?
No, but I think blurs, no. But I find in a certain kind of story that's usually labeled news analysis, that some of the conclusions that are written border on opinion.
We talk about this on the show a lot, the blurred line between opinion and real news. Do you think there is more of an effort for reporters today from them to want to be in the headlines, to be part of that story? And is that part of the distrust that the American people feel today? Is they don't really know where to get the truth oftentimes?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of confusion, and I think it's stoked. I think a villain in this is Twitter, because if you look at what a Washington Post reporter writes in their stories and compare it to their tweets, like there's nothing measured about the tweets. And, you know, if someone in middle America and in red America is seeing those tweets and following reporters, they'd have reason to think, you know, that they're very opinionated and harsh.
Well, you
in their
went
view
after
of
Trump pretty hard.
Huh?
You went after them pretty hard, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. So you were also the first woman to serve as the executive director. The executive editor of the New York Times.
Yeah.
Then in 2014, I believe they fired you.
Yes.
Right? Now I'm not saying this is. I'm just asking as a friend. I'm asking for a friend. Do you have an axe to grind?
No. I grew up here in New York, and my parents had 2 subscriptions to the New York Times. So
you're
I have
mad that they fired you at all?
idolized the paper, and I have no axe to grind. And at the end of Merchants of Truth, I say that Arthur Sulzberger Jr., who is the publisher who canned me, that he's kind of the hero of the story, because he never slashed the newsroom. He never took down the number of journalists the way so many other papers did. And he kept quality journalism alive.
Was it Sulzberger?
He called me up to his office and said, I am making a change and you're out.
Well, our thanks to Jill Abramson. Her new book, Merchants of Truth, is available now, and you're all going home with a copy. We'll be right back.